Welcome to Inside Sim Racing and this special interview with our good buddy Stephen Hood at Codemasters, one of the lead developers of Formula One 2013. I'm Darren Ganji here with my good buddy
Sean Cole.
As a matter of fact, my good buddy was the guy that got to sit down with Stephen today. I'd like to give a shout out to Paul Geel. He was supposed to be involved too, but had to, I think he was meeting with Formula One management or something, FOM.
They might be a little more important than us.
I think they might be. So anyway, it was kind of a bummer not to see him, but what we did was this Skype interview because this was the first year that we didn't get to meet up with them at E3.
Yeah, which is kind of a bummer because we always have fun hanging out with them.
Yeah, for sure. I'd like to apologize actually for the quality of this one compared to the last one we did with Pablo Lopez. Didn't seem to come out as good. Lose sync a little bit. So in other words, his voice doesn't match what his lips are doing. We'll try to get it adjusted. But
well, it's all being done on the internet, so we're at the perils of the internet.
Yeah, it came out pretty good though, and the sound quality is on Steven's side is so-so, but you could pretty much understand what he's, the point he's trying to make and what he's saying. I'd like to thank Steven for taking the time out. Andy Gray is the one that helped arrange this on their end. So coming to us from Great Britain, we have one of the lead developers and has been since the beginning, since 2010, of the upcoming title, Formula One 2013, going to be available for the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and the PC. Here's Sean Cole with Stephen Hood.
I'm here with Stephen Hood of the Codemasters Formula One development team, and this is the first year since you guys started the franchise that you actually haven't come to the U.S. during E3, but it's great to have you on the show today. Stephen, how you doing?
I'm doing wonderfully well. Thank you very much. You?
I'm doing very well. Great to have you here, like I said, and it's a shame we didn't get to see you guys in person this year because, well, let's get right to it. You didn't come to the U.S. this year. Why is that? I mean, is there a lack of interest in Formula One in the United States, or why did you not make it here this year?
No, certainly not. I think it's just because we had a slightly different release schedule this year in the sense that our focus was really the magic new content that we're putting in the 2013 game that happens to be on current gen formats. And I think, it's to be expected to a certain extent that, the focus is what is everybody going to be doing later on this year, the new games that are going to come out. And I think there was a consideration that maybe we'd get washed over a little in that, and maybe we should stay back in the UK, or some of us stay back in the UK and concentrate on making this, the best Formula One game that we've made to date, and in consideration of the new content that we're going in. So I was able to take a break and to spend all my time in the office, which was fantastic.
So we mentioned Formula One in the United States. Obviously, the sales vary from region to region. Where is the best sales for you guys, and where does the U.S. lie in the order?
If you look at across all the territories, actually, US is particularly good for us, and I think people would automatically assume that wouldn't be the case. But Formula One's kind of back in the States. I think there's a bigger following than people would necessarily imagine. The game's been doing very well for us, and it's also building up a reputation, and people looking forward to the next game coming out. It's getting bigger and bigger over the globe. It's huge in Brazil at the moment, and we're seeing a huge spike in interest over there, and in particular for 2013. And that's probably because of some of the content they're adding.
Yeah, so it basically, kind of goes along with where Formula One is popular in general.
Absolutely, yeah. There's always a trend to follow, but also because we've got perhaps a slightly different age range, typically for people that are playing on a console and the PC, we're out to a very varied audience anyway. And I think in the different territories that follow a particular console, you see those trends matching with what happens in the real world of Formula One. So, if that sport's getting bigger, then that's only good news for us, which is a huge positive, really.
Absolutely. Okay, so while we're still kind of focusing on sales a little bit, of the 3 prior years, has there been a difference in sales? Which one's done the best of the versions you've made?
F1 2010 had the strongest impact. And I think that's because there was a pent-up demand for Formula One game. We suddenly came multi-format. We were offering something very different. But what's been interesting is, as the industry is kind of closing down now, and you could say for a while, probably the past 2 years, 18 months, we've been moving towards that kind of next generation phase, and the markets have been shrinking for most titles. Formula One has still performed incredibly well. And certainly when we're gauging the reception that we're likely to get for 2013, there's a tremendous amount of awareness for 2013 now, and it's only been a few days since we started to reveal the content for this title. And I think it's because we're offering something very different. But it is always an interesting time for us because people are talking next gen, and we're trying to offer this amazing new game on a current gen for the machines that people have still got in their living room.
All right, now let's turn our direction towards 2013. You mentioned at the beginning sort of a new enthusiasm for this iteration of the title. This year brings historic content, and I know you get a lot of requests for it, so let's talk about it. What should we expect from the historic content?
So yeah, I mean, every year we're going to say we're working on it, and now it is finally included. But the shocking thing is that people are always looking for more. And the day that we're kind of announcing that we're including classic content, people are saying, "Well, have you got this? Have you got the 50s? Have you got the 60s? Have you got the 70s?" And it's like, we're just giving you the stuff that you've asked for. People are never happy, but then neither are we. So with the classic content, we've got an entire 80s pack in there. We've put an entire 90s pack that can be available in there, and this includes, not just the cars and the tracks that you can typically download in other racing games, where you can kind of get, a few circuits from this era and a few cars from that manufacturer, and it's not really a complete Formula One event. That's what we're able to offer. So obviously, the difference for us is that we have the drivers as well, and that's a very special thing. I think it's all too easy to kind of just have the cars, a smattering of different tracks, but what we're trying to offer is more of that complete Formula One experience, and not just a particular year, because there was a discussion about maybe just having 1992 or just having 1988 or 87, but let's face facts. I mean, most people probably only know about the highlight cars or the race winners or the great characters in Formula One, and especially if you're part of the younger generation, you weren't watching all of this on TV. But these kind of highlights still get replayed today by the broadcasters, so we're trying to tap into that. And just offer a cool experience, and I think packaging them as 90s content and 80s content with a variety of cars and drivers and circuits to go with all of those makes it a little more compelling. At least we think so, and we're about to find out how well that goes down.
When it came to the past content, what was licensing? Were you able to get all the old drivers?
No, I mean it's always difficult, and the problem is the further you go back in time, you're more likely to encounter problems, because some of the drivers, have walked away from the sport or are no longer with us, or the rights to kind of different sponsors and cars and circuits are owned by a variety of people across the globe, and some of them are easy to contact, some of them aren't. So it has been a kind of a colossal effort, as you might imagine, to kind of get these things licensed. And I think that the hoops that we have to jump through in order to get it into an official game, it is very difficult. And this is why we've been working on it for such a long time. And then there was the decision to, should we release it now for 2013 when we're ready to go, or do we hold it back for the future? And people have been asking for this for so long that we felt the time was right to include it. As soon as these deals are done, let's get this content into the game, get it into the hands of the gamers, and there we are.
Now, do you know now, is this historic content going to be included in the title, or is this going to be like DLC?
Yeah, so by default, you're going to get an 80s pack, which gives you access to some of the tracks, all the cars from the 1980s with the associated drivers. We've got a classic edition that also incorporates the 90s content, the 90s pack, as you might call it. And if you've just got the standard game, you're able to purchase the 90s pack with all the drivers and the cars, and also download the additional tracks. So eventually everybody will be able to kind of get all this content. So what we don't want to do is separate gamers, so it's kind of between the haves and the have-nots. Everybody will be able to get that, but I think those that are jumping on quickly now to pre-order are, from what I see, predominantly going for that classic edition to kind of get everything from the off. I mean, how do you really pick between the 80s and the 90s? Myself as a gamer, I want both. I'd want everything, and that means the classic edition.
Now, you mentioned being greedy and wanting the 80s and the 90s. Certainly you must have some favorite, though. Is there anything out there that you're just dying to have out there in the public so you can race against everybody?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in the office. I've been driving the 80s a lot. Any of the 80s cars around kind of Brands Hatch. I mean, that is such an awesome experience. It's a cool little track, and really kind of feeling these kind of turbo era cars blasting around that circuit. That is a completely different experience to what you'd normally get in our Formula One offerings, which are obviously modern day from 2010 through to now 2013 cars. There hasn't been a huge change. There's been kind of aerodynamic regulations. I mean, the tyres changing. That kind of stuff happens all the time, and for me, that's always been, price of entry between each title. But to go further back when these cars were very, very different, then that you almost have to learn how to drive these 80s cars or learn how to drive these 90s cars and how to maximise them. So, it's a very different experience, and I think it's nice to just take one of these cars onto a track and time trial it, let alone, up against your kind of favourite drivers, playing the Grand Prix and the different weather conditions with the 80s era pit stops that we've included, or 90s era pit stop, and you're playing that pack. So, maybe we're offering too much, I think.
Sound crashes over me. The crews, engines, crowd, the air is electric. Every rider burning to win, and each one pushing to the limit. But when I find that edge, when they all fall away, the silence is deafening, and I know at that moment that I am the one. MotoGP 13 out in June.
So I know you guys, we've been friends a long time. You guys play hours on end at the office. Do you find yourself driving more the historic or the modern stuff now?
To begin with, certainly I was driving the classic cars, just because it was nice to kind of get a classic car onto a track and you just look at the model. What you end up doing, or what I just end up time trialing, and I'd look at some of the cars in the replays, and you just watch it going around going, man, that looks so cool. Watching that car bounce around the track, seeing the flames coming out of the back, bit of oversteer coming out of the corner, you hear the turbo. It just looks amazing. And I know I'm biased because I'm working on the project, but a lot of people are going to buy into that. But then since then, we've been working on other aspects of the game, obviously, because it's not all about the classic content. I'm still updating that 2013 game. As you'd expect, it has all the kind of rule changes, driver moves, new team liveries, performance stats, and refining a number of areas of the game as well, and adding new features. And what I've been doing recently when playing single player is in 2013 on some of the interesting tracks, like I really love Shanghai, places like Melbourne, one of my other personal favourites, which is a great testing circuit as well, Catalonia, racing against the AI, trying myself in driving as Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes this season, or being Max Chilton in the Marussia and giving myself a real challenge starting at the back of the grid. Because of the improvements we've made to the AI, I'm now playing it, and I'm not joking, I've got a grin on my face. We've made improvements to the lighting model, the grandstands, all the crowds in there. And when you're racing, fighting your way through the field, feeling as though you're earning your position when you're battling against the AI, I do feel as though we've taken another step forwards there. We've always tried to do something very interesting with the AI and not ignored that. But now it's about battling against those other cars, and that is strangely satisfying. It's really good fun. So, to answer your question, I've been playing it all.
All right. Well, you kind of talked about the 2013 stuff and the new physics changes. What kind of changes have you made to the way the car is handling? I mean, if there have been big changes, would people notice a different feel?
Yeah, I think obviously the 2012 cars through to 2013, it's not like we can suddenly say, the vehicles now drift around the corners. There's never going to be a huge change there in terms of what actually happens in the sport. But what we can still do, and where we can make our huge leaps, is in how we're kind of simulating that driving experience. And a lot of time's been put into feelings, the feeling as though you can adjust the car and the attitude of the car on the brakes and on the throttle out of the corners. And it's something we've played around with before. If you think back to 2011, maybe we went too far in that direction. The cars were maybe too skittish, although a lot of people still say that would be their favourite. But 2012, I think, was the most realistic experience that we released to date. And let's not forget that we do drive a lot of the team simulators, and we can kind of feel how they replicate this experience as well, and how it tallies with ours. And 2013 is a definite extension of that. And I just feel the car is a little more adjustable this year. You get into a nice groove of racing. You can kind of feel the tyres going off, and we match the tyre wear rates to what's going on this season. Not the tyre explosions, before you ask me about that. The tyre wear and those kind of things, how the car works in the different weather conditions, which we refined this year, so it will be a little easier for players to understand what's going on. It's more of a kind of complete addition. We've obviously got a lot of experience in Formula One now. We've taken a lot of kind of fan feedback on community to drive. It's about the player getting into that groove and having that level of consistency that's important.
Sure. Okay, now what about on the historic end? I mean, you guys are designing completely new car handling for the older cars. Were you able to get input from anybody there, or you just make them more slipperier and nastier?
Yeah, what we're trying to do is, we've actually, the people that we get in contact with, the further you go back in time, these guys that I will leave as anonymous, but very rich guys who've got some cool playthings, and they get to drive these cars at certain events. They can take them out onto the tracks and whatnot. And that's the kind of experience that we're speaking to them about. How it felt to drive these cars, how raw they are, the things that you have to do in order to extract the performance of these old era cars. Not so much, a car like a 92 Williams, which if you drive that in our video game and then you go further back to like 80s Williams or whatever, they're all very different. So you have to ask a variety of people, and some of the big names that drove these cars, they're starting to get more and more involved as we agreed licensing deals with them. We can incorporate their name into the game and speak to them about how it felt at the time. But these guys aren't even playing video games, so there is a bit of a discussion there about replicating how they believe the car drove at the time. And let's not forget that they haven't driven them for a long time. Through to what the gamer would expect them to handle like, through to what the owner provides us in terms of input. And I think it's combining all those facets of information and then trying to create an experience out of it that looks very realistic and matches the kind of lap times that the cars are capable of at the time. So it is hard work, but I think it's been an experience for the development team because it is so different from the normal Formula 1 game that they had to make. And I think whether or not we've kind of matched that, reviews of kind of previews from people that are playing it at the moment is very positive. So I look forward to what the gamers say.
Well, I look forward to trying it all out. That's for sure. Let's talk about 2013 a little more. Tracks. I mean, have you made changes to the tracks? Are there improvements to old tracks? What are we looking at there?
Yeah, I mean, every year we almost get forced to kind of make updates to the tracks, and that's only quite right in terms of them being accurate or being approved by the circuit holders and Formula One management themselves. But the big thing for us, probably when it comes to the tracks, or the overall look of the game, which includes the tracks, is the lighting model that we're using this year. I mean, we can talk about the fact that we're still on current gen, but we know this incredibly well, and we know kind of where to extract the performance and how to get more out of these machines that people have still got. And I think, the work that the guys have done and the hours they put into it, you can see the difference now. I think some people have already started to upload videos where they do side-to-side comparisons, and sometimes for us, as a developer, you're working on the game kind of day in, day out. You don't see those improvements because they happen over time. But when you take a step back and you see somebody comparing them to the old title, and you suddenly think, hey, that's still on this generation of machine. Why didn't we do that a long time ago? And the reason is, we've had to kind of go through this learning process and indeed hire new people and hire more resources into the team. And we've got new art directors, had a massive impact on the overall look of the game. And I think it looks a lot more realistic. And at the same time, more appealing. It's very difficult to explain. I'm no artist, but it looks a hell of a lot better.
And now at the end of the life cycle of this gen. So why the decision to not go next gen with this title?
Yeah, well, I'm sure I'll get into trouble saying this, but I just don't want to. I've said in an interview recently, actually, I just don't want to tart the game up and just put it out. And I don't think the company at large, or certainly the development team, want to do that either. I think we're always going to be looking at new machines. A company like Codemasters that's multi-format isn't going to stick its head in the sand and not thinking about tomorrow. Of course they are, but as far as we're concerned, it's about offering a new experience when we go to next gen. It's not just turning all of this stuff up to 11 and saying, here you are, here's a slightly improved Formula One game. We want to offer something different, and I think that would be time for us to turn the page. We've got the classic content. We knew we'd get more out of these consoles. People have still got them in their living rooms, and the next gen's out a fair bit later. Let's deliver what we've got now. Sign off potentially with an amazing game, and then look to next gen for the future.
Cool. Well, we've covered a lot of things. Anything else that you think we left out that's new to this version of the title?
Yeah, there's probably just one more thing I'd want to add to it as well. I mean, there are a number of features that we're still yet to talk about, but one of the things I'm hoping is well received is the ability to go and save the race wherever you are, indeed save in any session. So, you know what I'm like over the past few years when it comes to Formula 1. I'm always talking about the strategy and the tactics and, stopping on lap 20, changing your tyres and going for a run to the end and see if you can make it a two-stopper. And that's great because I've got all the time in the world when I'm playing in the office. I can pretend I'm working and I'm actually playing the game and just shut my door on all day and get paid for it, which is fantastic. But for the average person out there, everybody's got these kind of time commitments, and it's sometimes rare to be able to spend a lot of time in a video game in one kind of sitting. And I think the feedback that we get from people is they really love Formula One. They love all the content that we're including and the strategy that we've got on offer, but they're playing the really short races. So they're missing out on so much of the magic that has always been in Formula One, and indeed there is more of in 2013. So now if you can kind of save it, you can play it at your leisure. And I'm hoping that means that people get to experience the longer races and do all the pit stops and all the cool stuff. And, starting a race where it's raining and then, a number of laps later it's drying out and the decisions that you have to make and, experience Formula One for what it really is. I think you can finally do that now with mid-race save.
So just out of curiosity, if I save a game, I'm halfway through a race and I come back and play it, will everything from that point forward be the same, or is it going to be random when I come back and restart?
Well, it would hard to say that. It's hard to answer that because you don't know what's upcoming yet. So if there's a car that's worn its engine and the engine's about to blow, then it would still be in the same state. Whether or not it blows at exactly the same point, then probably not, because it's going to be driving in a different manner, or so many different things happen. It's like when some people ask us about whether or not we could take a real life scenario and download the GPS data for a particular race, and my argument against that is, as soon as the player's involved, you involve a human, you kind of diverge into your own reality. So things can change based on what goes on the track. It's all very dynamic. So, play around with it.
Cool. Yeah, well, that's perfect, and that makes sense on the whole GPS thing. Well, Stephen, it's been great hearing from you. I am so bummed that we didn't get to see you at E3. I want you to be sure to say hi to Paul from all of us here. And are you guys going to come next year?
I would hope so, yeah. We're just giving you a year break. We're building up to it. It's going to be crazy next year, I'm sure.
Well, it always is when we get to hang out with you guys. So thank you very much for your time today, and we're all really looking forward to this title.
No problem. Fantastic talking to you. Thanks very much.
Have a good one.
Cheers.
So that went really well. Besides our glitches. We had a few drops there. We had to restart things a few times. But Steven's such a great guy. So is Paul. It's kind of a bummer not to see him. And Andy, those three guys have been so good to us in our show.
Right.
And always just have been just willing to go the extra mile for us.
Making sure that we have cool footage for you all to see before the release of the game,
This footage that was in this show, exclusive to us. Andy captured it for us.
Yeah.
For this, from the studio. We don't have a copy yet. We wish we could give you some input on what we think about it. Man, I can't wait to drive those historic cars.
Me too. And you know what is so cool about this? I mean, when you talk about a title that repeats each year, like Madden, it's awesome that they brought so much more to the table. I mean, this is a completely new facelift, not just in the season, but the old stuff.
Yeah, and it's gonna be really cool to see the historic stuff. Something that wasn't mentioned that we were gonna ask, but it pretty much was answered was, are all the drivers gonna be there?
Right.
And one that we would have liked to have seen is Ayrton Senna, and he's not gonna be in the game. So like Steven mentioned, going back to those older. The older generation of drivers and tracks, it's a lot harder to get those licensing deals because they're just not right there in front of them.
Well, and like current stuff, you make a deal with F1, you kind of get everything. You go back in the past, and it's not that easy.
It isn't. So again, we'd like to thank Stephen Hood and Andy Gray for taking the time and getting that arranged for us, and for providing this great footage that we were showing you guys during this during the interview. And we're really looking forward to getting our hands. Hopefully on an early build.
Mm-hmm.
They usually will send us something early, and if they do, we'll be showing you guys everything we can. So for Sean Cole, I'm Darren Ganji. Hopefully you've enjoyed this interview on the upcoming title, Formula One 2013 by Codemasters. We'll see you guys next time.